The morning sun glared off the tarmac at JFK International Airport at 8:15 a.m., casting long shadows across the busy runway. Inside the first-class cabin of Titan Airways Flight 402, the air was cool and smelled faintly of expensive leather and fresh coffee. 19-year-old Maya Sterling adjusted her oversized gray hoodie and pulled her noise-canceling headphones down around her neck. She looked out the window, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and anxiety, clutching her backpack tightly against her chest. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Maya was not the typical passenger in seat 1A. She wore worn-out sneakers, no makeup, and her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She had spent the last 2 weeks in an intense art residency in New York and just wanted to get home to Los Angeles to see her father. She reached into her bag to check her glucose monitor. Maya was a type 1 diabetic, and the stress of travel always made her blood sugar unstable. She grabbed a small bottle of orange juice from her bag, just in case, and settled into the wide, plush seat. A flight attendant named Brenda walked down the aisle. Brenda was tall, with hair sprayed into a helmet of perfection and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She stopped at row 1 and looked down at Maya. Her smile vanished instantly. She looked at Maya's hoodie, then at the expensive seat, and then back at Maya's face with a look of pure suspicion. "Excuse me, miss," Brenda said, her voice sharp and loud enough for the rows behind them to hear. "This is the first-class cabin. Economy boarding is toward the back of the plane." Maya looked up, blinking. "I know," she said softly. Her voice was raspy from lack of sleep. "I'm in seat 1A. This is my seat." Brenda let out a short, dismissive laugh. She crossed her arms over her chest. "Let me see your boarding pass." Maya fumbled with her phone, her hands shaking slightly. She hated confrontation. She pulled up the QR code and held it out. Brenda snatched the phone from her hand, scrolling through the screen aggressively. The ticket was valid, paid for in full, and assigned to Maya Sterling. But Brenda wasn't satisfied. She handed the phone back with a sneer. "Systems make mistakes all the time," Brenda muttered. "There is no way a teenager bought a $5,000 ticket. You probably used a stolen credit card or hacked the upgrade list. I need you to grab your bags and wait in the galley while I sort this out." "I didn't steal anything," Maya said, her heart rate picking up. "My father bought the ticket. Please, I just want to sleep. I'm not feeling well." "Don't play the victim with me," Brenda snapped. "Move. Now." Maya felt the heat rising in her cheeks. She stayed seated. "No, I have a valid ticket. I'm staying right here." Brenda's face turned red. She pressed the call button on the wall. 2 minutes later, a heavy-set man in a plain suit walked up the aisle. This was Officer Miller, the flight sky marshal. He had been watching from the galley and looked eager for a reason to exert authority. "Problem here, Brenda?" Miller asked, his voice booming. "She's refusing crew instructions and holding a fraudulent ticket," Brenda lied smoothly. "She's becoming aggressive." Maya's eyes went wide. "Aggressive? I haven't moved." Officer Miller didn't ask questions. He leaned into Maya's personal space, his breath smelling of stale tobacco. "Listen, kid. On this plane, what the crew says goes. You get up now, or I drag you up." Maya panicked. Her blood sugar was dropping rapidly due to the spike in adrenaline. She felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. She reached for her backpack to get her glucose monitor and the juice. "I need my bag," she stammered. "I have a medical condition. I need—" She's reaching for something. Brenda shrieked, jumping back dramatically. Miller didn't hesitate. He grabbed Maya's arm and yanked her out of the seat. Maya cried out in pain as her shoulder twisted. She wasn't fighting back. She was trying to keep her balance, but the dizziness was taking over. Miller spun her around and shoved her face against the bulkhead wall. "Stop fighting," Miller yelled, though Maya was limp in his grip. He pulled a pair of plastic zip-tie handcuffs from his pocket and cinched them tight around her wrists behind her back. He pulled them so tight that they bit into her skin, cutting off circulation. "Please," Maya gasped, tears streaming down her face. "My medicine." "In the bag." "I'm dizzy." "Save it for the police," Miller grunted. He shoved her back into the seat, but this time he didn't buckle her in comfortably. He left her slumped awkwardly against the window, her hands bound painfully behind her. The other passengers watched in stunned silence. A kind-looking elderly woman in row 2 stood up. "Officer, she looks pale. Is that really necessary? She's just a girl." "Sit down, ma'am," Miller barked. "This is a federal matter. Do not interfere." The flight took off at 9:30 a.m. For the next 5 hours, Maya lived in a nightmare. The pain in her wrists was agonizing, but the feeling inside her body was worse. Her blood sugar was crashing. Her vision began to blur. Black spots danced in front of her eyes. She tried to call out to Brenda, who passed by offering champagne to other passengers. "Water," Maya whispered, her tongue feeling thick and heavy. "Juice, please." Brenda looked down at her with disgust. "You should have thought about that before you caused a scene. You can have water when the police take you into custody in L.A." Maya's head fell forward. The cold sweat on her forehead turned to ice. Her body began to tremble. She wasn't acting. She was going into hypoglycemic shock. Her brain was starving for energy. She thought of her dad. He was supposed to meet her at the gate. He would be worried if she didn't text him. But she couldn't text. Her phone was in her bag, and her hands were bound. As the plane began its descent into Los Angeles at 11:45 a.m., Maya's consciousness slipped away. The world turned gray, then black. Her head lolled to the side, hitting the window with a dull thud. "She's faking it," Brenda told Miller, who was buckling himself in for landing. "Trying to get sympathy." Miller glanced at the unconscious girl. "Let her sleep. Makes my job easier." The plane touched down at 12:15 p.m., the tires screeching against the runway. As the aircraft taxied to the gate, Brenda got on the PA system. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We have a security situation that needs to be cleared by local authorities before anyone can deplane." The passengers grumbled. Brenda felt smug. She had protected her cabin. She watched out the window as the jet bridge connected. She expected 2 regular airport cops to come board and drag the girl away. Instead, the scene outside the window was chaotic. Several black SUVs with tinted windows raced across the tarmac and screeched to a halt right next to the plane's front wheels. This was highly irregular. Usually, cars weren't allowed that close to the jet. The cabin door opened. Brenda stepped forward, putting on her professional face, ready to direct the officers to seat 1A. But it wasn't the police who stepped onto the plane first. A tall, imposing black man in an impeccably tailored Navy suit stormed onto the aircraft. He had broad shoulders and an energy that made the air in the cabin feel heavy. He pushed past the gate agent. Behind him were 2 paramedics carrying a trauma kit, and behind them were 4 grim-faced men in dark suits wearing earpieces. Brenda blinked. She recognized the man, but her brain couldn't place him immediately. He looked furious. His eyes scanned the cabin like a predator looking for a threat. "Sir, you cannot be on here," Brenda said, stepping in his path. "We have a prisoner in custody." The man didn't even look at her. He shoved past her with a strength that sent her stumbling back into the galley wall. He looked straight at seat 1A. "Maya," the man roared. The passengers gasped. The man rushed to the slumped figure of the teenage girl. When he saw the plastic handcuffs digging into her purple, swollen wrists, a sound escaped his throat that was half growl, half sob. He touched her cheek. It was ice cold. "Medic," he shouted. "Get in here. Now." The paramedics rushed past a stunned Officer Miller. One medic pulled out a pair of trauma shears and cut the plastic cuffs off Maya's wrists. Her arms fell lifelessly to her sides. "She's unresponsive," the medic yelled. "Checking vitals. Blood sugar is critically low. She's in shock." Officer Miller stood up, putting his hand on his holster. "Hey, step away from the prisoner. Who do you think you are?" The man in the suit stood up slowly. He turned to face Miller and Brenda. The rage in his eyes was terrifying. He was trembling, but not from fear. "I am Marcus Sterling," the man said, his voice low and vibrating with power. "I am the CEO and owner of Titan Airways. And that prisoner is my daughter." The silence that followed was deafening. It was as if all the oxygen had been sucked out of the plane. Brenda's face went completely white. She grabbed the counter to steady herself. Officer Miller's hand dropped from his holster as if it had been burned. Mr. Sterling," Brenda stammered. We didn't know." She had a hoodie. She refused instructions. She is diabetic. Marcus screamed, his composure finally breaking. She has a medical alert bracelet on her right wrist. Did you check? Did you listen? The medic shouted from a seat. Sir, we have a pulse, but it's weak. We need to get glucose into her immediately. We're moving her out. Marcus turned back to his daughter, stroking her hair gently as the medics lifted her onto a stretcher. He walked with them to the door, ignoring the crew. But at the doorway, he stopped. He turned back to the security team that had come with him. He pointed a shaking finger at Brenda and Officer Miller. Don't let them leave this aircraft. Marcus ordered his security team. I want the airport police here. I'm filing charges for assault, battery, and criminal negligence. And get the flight manifest. I want the names of every crew member who watched my daughter suffer and did nothing. Brenda began to cry. Sir, please, I was just following protocol. I thought she was a threat. Marcus walked right up to her face. You judge a child by her clothes and her skin color. You nearly killed her because you felt powerful. You're fired. Effective immediately. And you, he looked at Miller, you better pray she wakes up without permanent damage, or I will spend every penny I have ensuring you never see the outside of prison cell again. Marcus turned and ran down the jet bridge after the stretcher. It was 1:45 p.m. when Maya finally opened her eyes in the emergency room of the local hospital. The lights were bright. Her wrists were bandaged and throbbed with a dull ache. She felt weak, but the dizziness was gone. She looked to her left. Her father was sitting in a plastic chair, his expensive suit jacket thrown on the floor, his tie undone. He was holding her hand with both of his head bowed in prayer. Dad, she whispered. Marcus's head snapped up. His eyes were red-rimmed. A look of pure relief washed over his face. Maya, baby girl, I'm here. I missed my flight, she murmured confusedly. The lady said I stole the ticket. Marcus kissed her forehead, tears slipping down his cheeks. You didn't miss anything, sweetheart. You're safe. I promise you, nobody is ever going to hurt you like that again. Back at the airport, the scene was chaotic. The story had already leaked to the news. CEO's daughter, tortured on his own plane, was the headline flashing across every screen in the terminal. Brenda was being escorted out of the airport in handcuffs, charged with reckless endangerment. Officer Miller was stripped of his badge and taken into federal custody. Maya spent 3 days in the hospital recovering from nerve damage in her wrists and severe dehydration. When she was finally discharged, she walked out into the sunlight holding her father's arm. She was still wearing her gray hoodie, but this time, nobody looked at her with suspicion. They looked at her with respect. She had survived a nightmare, and her father had brought the whole sky down to save her.